It began with a gunshot, a sharp crack that shattered the stillness of the tidy, cookie-cutter streets of Oakwood Heights. Birds erupted from the neatly trimmed trees, scattering in all directions. Porch lights snapped on in unison, and curtains twitched as drowsy suburbanites peered out their windows. Some dismissed it as a car backfiring, others a stray firework, but Tom Hargrove, seated in his wheelchair on his front porch, knew exactly what it was. At the end of his driveway stood Linda Pierce, the neighborhood's self-proclaimed guardian of the Homeowners Association. Her face twisted in fury, and she was holding a pistol. Tom exhaled sharply, his hands tightening on the armrests of his chair as he fixed his gaze on her trembling grip. It had all spiraled out of control over the pettiest of things: a mailbox, a wheelchair ramp, and a flagpole supposedly 3 inches taller than HOA rules permitted. Months of snide notes, fines, threats, and ridiculous accusations had led to Thea's full-blown meltdown. "Get off your porch right now," Linda barked, waving the gun erratically, as if Tom, who couldn't physically step anywhere, was just defying her out of spite. A porch light flared on across the street, and a voice shouted, "Linda, what in God's name are you doing?" She didn't flinch, her wild, bloodshot eyes boring into Tom. "This is my neighborhood," she screamed. "I won't let you ruin it with your." She flailed a hand toward his yard, grasping for words. "Your disrespect." Tom stayed still. He'd learned long ago not to poke a hornet's nest, especially one fueled by spite and cheap wine. "Linda," he said, voice steady, "you just shot a gun over an HOA rule." She blinked, glancing at the weapon in her hand as if seeing it for the first time. Her manic energy faltered, then surged back. "You think you can just roll and herald a rally and ignore the rules? You think you're above them?" Tom let out a dry, disbelieving laugh. "Linda, I'm in a wheelchair because I got blown up surviving this country. I'm not exactly hosting keggers or leaving Halloween decorations up till June. You broke HOA policies," she shrieked. "The flagpole's too tall, and your mailbox is the wrong shade of gray." Tom sighed. "Linda, you need serious help." Red and blue lights flickered in the distance, bouncing off the spotless driveways of Oakwood Heights. Neighbors, now wide awake, spilled onto their lawns, whispering and filming the spectacle. The HOA queen had finally toppled, but this wasn't the beginning. No, this was the endgame. When Tom first moved to Oakwood Heights months earlier, it seemed like paradise-wide sidewalks, a pristine park, and charming homes. A perfect spot for a quiet life. What he didn't bargain for was Linda Pierce, the iron-fisted ruler of the community. She didn't take kindly to newcomers, especially not ones like Tom who didn't bow to her every whim. Their first encounter set the tone. She'd strode up to his house, clipboard in hand like a sacred artifact, and flashed a smile that never reached her eyes. "Welcome to Oakwood Heights," she'd said. "I'm the HOA president. We have standards here." Tom, on his porch, had nodded. "Good to know." Her smile tightened. "I noticed your ramp. It wasn't in the original design." He blinked. "Yeah, it's a wheelchair ramp. So I can, get inside." "It's not HOA approved," she snapped, tapping her clipboard. "You'll need to submit a modification request." Tom stared at her. "Are you seriously telling me I need permission to access my own house?" Linda folded her arms. "Rules are rules." A man who'd survived actual combat zones, Tom bit back a laugh, said, "I'll keep that in mind," and wheeled inside, leaving her fuming. That should have been it. But it wasn't. The fine started soon after, slipped under his door, stuffed in his mailbox, emailed at odd hours. The flagpole was too high, the ramp clashed with the neighborhood YB, his trash cans lingered curbside 10 minutes too long. At first, Tom ignored them. When Linda escalated to taping passive-aggressive notes to his door signed in bold, underlined script, he fought back. He sent her proof his ramp was protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act, ignored the mailbox and flagpole nonsense, and laughed when she fined him for a non-compliant hose. That's when Linda's fixation turned personal. She began watching him repeat, deliberate surveillance. Neighbors reported her parked outside his house, scribbling notes. One joked she'd measure his grass with a ruler. Then one night, Tom heard a noise. His security footage showed Linda sneaking onto his property with a wrench. The next morning, his ramp wobble bolts loosened. He'd nearly tumbled off the porch. That's when he realized Linda wasn't just a nuisance, she was a threat. So he mounted a GoPro on his wheelchair, recording every encounter, every harassment, every absurd fine. At the annual block party, Tom snapped. Standing before the neighborhood, he said, "Let's give a round of applause to our fearless leader, HOA President Linda Pierce." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Linda, by the grill with a wine glass, flushed red. "She's made my life hell over a ramp she claims ruins the aesthetic. But credit where it's committed. Who else would sneak into a vet's yard to sabotage his mobility?" Gasps and chuckles followed. Linda's jaw locked. "That's a lie," she screeched. "You're ruining this place." Tom raised an eyebrow. "Linda, you know what happens when you mess with someone's property? The police do." Silence fell. She stormed off, but Tom knew she'd retaliate. He just didn't expect a gun. Now, as police swarmed his driveway and Linda stood frozen, clutching her pistol, Tom exhaled. This wasn't the retirement he'd envisioned, but it was one hell of a tale. The aftermath was swift. Oakwood Heights, once obsessed with lawn lengths, became a crime scene. Neighbors filmed as cops ordered Linda to drop the gun. She hesitated, then let it fall, instantly spinning excuses. "This is a misunderstanding," she cried. "I was protecting the neighborhood. He's been violating rules, the flagpole, the mailbox, the trash." An officer cut in. "Ma'am, you fired a gun over an HOA dispute." Linda gaped, seeking allies, but the crowd just watched. Even her usual yes-men backed away. Tom spoke up. "She's harassed me for months, vandalized my property, issued fake fines, and now this." Linda whirled on him. "You did this. You've undermined me since day one." "You made yourself a joke," Tom shot back. "I just pointed it out." The officer sighed. "Ma'am, you're coming with us." Linda thrashed as they led her away, screaming about setups and conspiracies. When the squad car door slammed, the silence was deafening. Her reign was over her, so Tom thought. By morning, the story exploded. News outlets splashed Linda's mugshot with headlines like "HOA Chief Fires Gun Over Trash Cans" and "Suburban Despot Snaps Over Mailbox." She became a meme, her rants dissected online. But Linda wasn't done. From jail, she rallied her loyalists, two busybody women and a guy named Carl who'd always nodded too eagerly. They spread rumors she'd been framed, that Tom had pushed her to the edge. "She'll be back," one whispered. Tom brushed it off. With charges like reckless endangerment and firearm violations, Linda wasn't walking free anytime soon. Yet the fines kept coming, notes in her same sanctimonious tone. "Per HOA guidelines, your ramp must be repainted." Tom crumpled them, realizing the problem wasn't just Linda, it was the system she built. At an emergency HOA meeting, her cronies tried to seize control. Carl announced, "The rules still stand. We're adding security measures for compliance." Tom laughed. "Security? For what? Rogue mailboxes?" Carl scowled. "It's about order." Tom leaned forward. "If you keep this up, I'll have the HOA investigated for harassment." "I've got proof." Carl blanched. Then a voice called out, "A motion to dissolve the HOA." A man waved a binder. "We can vote it out." Chaos erupted. Neighbors, fed up with years of petty tyranny, rallied. By the end, Linda's empire was dust. The video of her meltdown went viral, mocked on talk shows and Reddit. Linda lost everything: her job, her marriage, her home. Tom, meanwhile, bought her foreclosed house at auction, a poetic twist the neighborhood celebrated with a barbecue. He capped it with a sign, "Former residents of Linda Pierce, HOA tyrant." Never forget. When Linda drove by and saw it, she raged. "You think this is funny?" Tom grinned. "Hilarious. You ruined me." She spat. "No," he said, smile fading. "You did that yourself. I just lived through it." She stormed off, defeated. The HOA dissolved soon after, and Oakwood Heights breathed free. Trash cans lingered, lawn gnomes returned, and peace settled in. One evening, a neighbor handed Tom a beer. "Can't believe you bought our house." Tom smirked. "Best move I ever made." They toasted to the end of the HOA and a quiet life, finally won.